So I am the CEO and a co-founder of Sonovi Labs. We are a medical device and software company right here in Baltimore, and we really believe that technology is the thread that binds the continuum of healthcare. And our goal is to create affordable and accessible high-tech medical devices. So I've been with the company. I founded it about a year ago, but our research has been ongoing for about 4 years, and we're a spin out of Johns Hopkins University.
Evening, everyone. My name is Shalyn Thomas. I'm the co-founder of Thomas and Winter Research and Development. And essentially, what we want to be is the Procter and Gamble of the minority community. So we want to be able to partner someone who has great ideas with the folks in the minority community that can make that idea reality. So in essence, I should be able to hand you a turnkey version of whatever it is you want to create. If you want to create a book or something that has never been invented, I have the keys or the people that in place to help you make that a reality. So in essence, that's what we do. We've been in operation for 4 years, and we have two products now. And we've been successful with getting our first product into distribution, and we're actually looking to spread to the West Indies and some other parts of the world currently.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I will introduce and reintroduce myself to those that were here previously. My name is Kyle O'Connor. I am the co-founder and one of the managing partners at the Startup Nest. We are a co-working space and an incubator space located in Southwest Baltimore. So if you know where the Horseshoe Casino is, we're 2 blocks from there. We have a 28,000 square foot facility that we have turned into that we are turning into, because we're building in phases, a co-working space. So we have shared workspace, whether it's private offices, dedicated desks, conference rooms, things of that nature. We've got space for you. We also offer workshops and seminars, whether it's anything from business development to coding to marketing. We work with key subject matter experts that specialize in those areas, provide them a platform to come offer their workshops, and a lot of times it's for free, where people can come in and learn new skill sets. As much as we talk about startups, we also work with the investment community. So we try to be the intermediate party to help identify opportunities on both sides of the coin. So if you're an investor and you're looking for a cool startup that is engaging and doing some really cool stuff, we've got some good members in our community that we connect them with. A little bit of personal about myself. I am a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company when I was 21, still in existence today. It's a digital design agency where we've worked with anywhere from startups to Fortune 1000 companies to provide digital media assets, websites, mobile apps, things of that nature. That's my background. Been a part of companies that have done phenomenally well, sold to tech companies, to some larger entities in Northern Virginia, as well as I've been a part of companies that have crashed, burned, and failed. So I think that's another thing. If you were here previously, I talk about being honest with yourself, understanding that entrepreneurship is hard, but it's very rewarding as well. So I come from both sides of the tracks.
Hi, I'm Sharika Winter, the other half of Thomas and Winter, the fun guy behind all of this. I'm also still 100% in corporate America, still 100% in my entrepreneurship endeavors, and I teach and I instruct on the side, so I'm trying to figure out the perfect balance between corporate life, entrepreneur life, and just being incredibly dope, as I said before. My background is in mechanical engineering with a industrial design graduate school degree. I went to RPI, Region 1, National Society of Black Engineers, one fire. And I'm just here to, I guess, tell you about some of our dirty laundry that happens behind Thomas and Winter. This should get very interesting.
Okay, thank you. And the format will kind of be, I'll ask a few introductory questions, and then it'll be pretty informal for anyone to ask some questions. So I'd like to start off with the topic of failure has come up at several points throughout this day, and wanted to get some of your thoughts on the challenges that minority lead startups have found in funding, specifically in terms of some of the big failures that have occurred. Some of the big ones have been, For example, Jawbone raised $590 million, went through 14 funding rounds, had 19 investors. Juicero, $118 million raised, 4 funding rounds, 17 investors. So, and anyone can step in if you're familiar with any of these, but what are some of those challenges that happen with these big public failures?
So I'll just jump right in. I'm gonna pivot just a little bit,
Okay.
because I'm not intricately informed about all of those transactions, but I can give a very detailed and personal experience as well as it relates to that. Just to kind of take a step back, I think that minority entrepreneurs, as was mentioned previously, we devalue or we don't value what we have enough. McKeever, who was here earlier, he was talking about how, sometimes entrepreneurs go out and raise a bunch of money and they just take what they can get. Whenever you're in that type of mindset, you lose focus on the fact that investors are almost like dating. You don't necessarily just go on a date on the first time and then we getting married tomorrow. Don't happen that way. As much as they are engaging with you and asking questions, you should be doing the same thing. Personal story. I was part of a startup in 2010 where we were creating a product. We were raising a round of funding, and a gentleman that we engaged it with was an angel investor, had all these cool credentials, whatever. Put a term sheet on the table for a seven-figure dollar amount, and we jumped to it without even vetting them. Needless to say, that company failed. But it was a great experience because it let me know that there's two sides to this street. So I don't know about the failures of those companies, but hearing it from somebody that's kind of been through it in terms of putting a lot of sweat equity and actual capital into a business, and to see that one fail, is real. So making sure that if you are looking for funding, that it's a two-way conversation. Don't just take what they say for granted. Go back, do your research, vet these companies. If they've invested in somebody, reach out to somebody that they've invested in. Hey, what's your experience been like? What were some of the challenges? Was this a seamless transition? What are some of the terms? They may not give you the details of their terms, but try to get as much information as you can before you just jump right in. Because as soon as you get that money, it's real, and that clock starts. So that's one piece that I'll add out there.
I would say some of the bigger ones, like the Jawbones of the world, one of the biggest problem that these companies has is they get comfortable. So if you know Jawbone and a lot of their Bluetooth functionality and tech that they had, they were one of the few and one of the first ones to enter. And they kind of pulled the BlackBerry. Like, I'm here, y'all are going to take me, and I'm going to stay here. And the inability to realize where technology was going as far as Bluetooth was concerned, the inability to see how Bluetooth was involved in other aspects of your life and be able to capitalize on that, and knowing your customer's life journey is one of the failures of BlackBerry, one of the failures of Jawbone. So it wasn't a matter of having the money, it's a matter of not knowing how to react to your customer's needs and not being able to react fast enough and being comfortable. There's always somebody about to take the food off your plate. And when you think that you have monopolized the market, therein lies the problem. Just last week, I went to UTC and I was teaching them about product management. And they were like, hey, we have the elevator industry. I was like, you don't. And they were like, you're actually right. There's somebody creeping behind us trying to take this meat. And I was like, and the minute you get too comfortable, no matter how much money you have, there's someone over there looking to take that from you. And that's what happened with a lot of these companies. They're not listening to their customer and they're not reacting fast enough.
Okay, so I kind of heard two things. I heard failure, kind of like defining failure almost, and challenges to entry. So I kind of wanted to address defining failure first. To me personally, as an entrepreneur, I don't believe in failure. That's not a word we should use. Why? I'll get to that in a second. Instead of failure, consider it your pivot point. You need to understand, based on your KPIs or based on what you set out to do, when it's time to say, hey, this is not working, it's time to pivot into something else. When you say failure, it almost brings about the idea of, well, I need to throw up my hands and give up on all of this. Each time you come to a roadblock that most people would consider failure, it's a learning moment. all of those times that you hit those roadblocks, you have to find a way to get around them. And either that means you continue on the track that you're on, or you find a way to pivot to something else. So as an entrepreneur, I don't think you should ever have the vocabulary of failure. It is a learning and teaching moment. And some of the biggest companies out there, like Amazon, for instance, started off just selling books. When they started hitting roadblocks, that's when they realized, I need to pivot into something else. But you can see where they are today. So instead of saying, this is a failure, shutting everything down, they use that as building blocks and to learn as they pivoted to do something else. Another thing, as far as failure is concerned, as I can relate it to Thomas and Winter. One of the first product that we brought out was a men's sexual health product. It's essentially a constriction device that's supposed to make sex safer and all of that good stuff. When we were actually in production and stuff, what we really wanted to focus on was the health market, to be able to make it a medical device, to get into doctors' offices and so forth and so on. And that's when we started the process of looking how much it would cost to get FDA approval and all of that good stuff. But since we decided we wanted to start lean, we didn't want to go out there and get other investors' money. We wanted to be able to do this on our own dime. We quickly realized that the probably $100,000 that it was going to cost for us to do this, we couldn't do it at that point. So we kind of had to quickly say, okay, we're not going to say that that's a failure. That's a roadblock for us right now. We need to pivot. And that's when we started focusing more so on the novelty market. Now that we're successful in the novelty market, we can use that money towards trying to find a way back to the health market. So again, it's about pivoting. It's never about failure.
And to piggyback off of that, actually, I see the companies that you listed as successes based on the amount of funds that they were able to raise as minority-found businesses. I'm incredibly proud of what they were able to do. It's just then the what's next. So what did they do right? And I think it's important to look at that too. They told a compelling story. They had evidence-based research that allowed them to get to where they were. So let's focus on what they did right and then find that opportunity to pivot and where they may have gone wrong.
Okay. Okay, so if you all had to, and I know we have some serial entrepreneurs here, but if you had to launch a startup today, what skills would you want your core group, your core 2 to 3 founders to have? What is that? What are those skills that you look for?
Well, for me, I can say that strategy is always key. Having a strategist who understands your vision. So if you're the founder of the company, but you're saying, you know what, I'm coming from a different background and I don't know what hurdles are ahead of me, finding a key strategist. I would say the second would be that key networker, right? That person that has a powerful Rolodex that can help, I would say, propel you to where you want to be. Because really, you can have a great idea, but unless you have someone that really has the connect or knows how to get you where you need to be, you're kind of stuck, right? And then the third for me personally is strong tech. So to the point of always being compelling, always being a step ahead, you have to have someone innovative and in your space. So I won't limit it to tech, but I will say the innovator, right? So I would say the strategist, the networker, and the innovator.
Oh, okay, cool. I would definitely double down on everything that was just said. I think that the top 3 things that I look for in a co-founder are you either bring a skill set to the table, you bring access to a network, or you bring tangible assets, whether it's money, whether it's equipment, whether it's some type of access to a facility. If one of those 3 things aren't present, it's probably not going to be a good fit. And then you can take those 3 requirements and skew it into any industry, whether it's tech, whether it's marketing, whether it's business development. But I think that those 3 principles have been things that I've stuck to. And the instances that somebody falls out of those lines, it generally doesn't always work out. So I would definitely try to kind of narrow your requirements, and those 3 things have worked for me.
I think one that I wish we had that we don't is someone who's goal oriented. So my partner and I are very results driven. And so what happens is we get some good results. Yeah, we're going. And things start to go bad. We don't care anymore. Just gotta fall off. And you need someone who's hitting the goals. And we have to remind ourselves that, hey, we gotta keep going. You just can't ride the roller coaster. And that's really important. Someone who's really driven by the goals. And someone who is really okay being social. I think it's a highly undervalued skill. Someone who can just keep going, and they're always out there and they're just that guy or girl. I meant that in the most unisex way. But in this market where everything's social, and you have to be at that networking event, and you have to be at that party, and you have to be at that fundraiser, and you have to learn how to pitch, that is something that I admire the people that do it, and I can only do it for X amount of time, and he doesn't necessarily like to do it, so therefore we all just need those two things, goal-oriented and that person, that social person.
So I think, just speaking from our experience, something that we excelled at was we had somebody that could handle design. We had somebody that could get manufacturers. We had someone with a strong kind of financial background. We had someone that can do the operation side of the house. What we were missing between the two of us is someone who really had a great command of social media and SEO and all of that stuff. So for instance, for us, since it's a product company, naturally we need to be able to educate. Not only is it a product, but it's a product that's never been really seen before out there. So we need the ability to acquire customers by basically telling them essentially what it is before they have a chance to buy it. That was the most difficult hurdle for us on the planet. And even if you go out and you try to outsource these things, a lot of the times they don't have necessarily the time or the patience to really understand what it is you're trying to do and what it is what the target market you're trying to acquire. You can tell them, hey, between these ages and this and this and this, but there are certain keywords and certain things, if you really understand SEO, if you really understand social media, that you need to be paying on. So I would say in this environment, someone with that kind of background is going to be really key and essential, and you'll save thousands of dollars if you have somebody to do that for you.
Can I add one more thing? Sure. I also think that you have to have somebody that's willing to go through the trenches with you, right? They got to be willing to take criticism and also give it. If you have the inability to be honest with your co-founder, with things that aren't going right, it's going to hurt the business in the long run. So you guys have to have that relationship where transparency is key. It's never going to be easy sharing bad news, but we got to get through it. So we have to have the trust level and the transparency so tight that, hey, let's get to it first. All right, cool. Let's figure out what the solution is. Let's find a clear line of sight in terms of solving that problem, and let's move forward. You have to have somebody that has to have a short-term memory, but long-term goals. I think that's something that is people too sensitive.
Man.
People too sensitive, man. It's just business. And at the end of the day, let me not use that lightly. It's just business. Sometimes this is people's lives, right? But if it's that serious to you and you holding on to information that you need to share with somebody, you're hurting yourself at the end of the day. So, like, finding somebody that can go through the trenches with you is important.
So I'll ask one more questions and then we can open it up. On that point, so let's say you're finding the great people that are going to work with you, that are going to go in the trenches with you. How do you handle the equity split? How do you decide on equity for co-founders, employees, board members?
I think you have to think about what each person brings to the table and the value that it has long term. For example, in our company, just the two of us for now. He's the idea guy. He's going to come up with some idea at any given point of the day and pitch it. And I'm the engineer. It's like, that doesn't make much sense. Let's go this way. But without the idea guy, I don't exist. And without me, he doesn't exist. So we started and said, okay, well, since you're the idea guy, you take most, and I'll take less. And then the more we grew, we realized, well, I got a little more to add to the table. We can't have that much. We're in a position where it's like, okay, now we're 50-50. And then as the company grows, I mean, in all honesty, minority women-owned businesses are getting a level of attention that it's never had before. And so we had a conversation driving one day and was like, listen, it's about time I might need to own more for us to get more. And you have to have those real conversations with your partners to say, who can get us more for now? And we were like, on paper it's this way, but we will still split the profit. We will still do what we have to do the regular way. But you have to really evaluate your business annually to say, how can we move forward as far as equity is concerned, and what's in the best benefit for the business, and putting your ego aside and saying, just because I lost a couple percentages here and there, that doesn't mean, oh, you're less valuable or I'm more valuable. This is a partnership. It has to move forward. And so it's important, going back to who are your partners. If this person is in it for them and they want their own shine, and then they're going to call for a level of equity that probably isn't in their best interest, because they're going to take advantage of that.
I would rather have a smaller piece and a bigger pie than the whole pie. At the end of the day, value is important. I think you really need to be strategic in how you distribute equity, right? So if we start off as the founding group, I think you can be a lot more lenient when it comes to the distribution. Again, in business, it's performance based, right? I can't just give you half and you don't do at least half the work. You just chilling on social media, you just doing whatever. You just want to go to all the events, but you don't want to do the work. It's not going to work out that way. So I think the founding group, you could be a little bit more lenient. As it relates to investors or new partners and things of that nature, you can set benchmarks. You don't just have to just say, hey, plain writing, here is your equity. Let's make it performance based. Let's have these people who want to be on board. Well, you need to vest some time. Let's put 6 months on the table, see what you do. We'll give you a piece. Meet that metric or over exceed it, there's more to come. But let's set those boundaries, because at the end of the day, you guys, or you two, as an example, you're the founding group, right? So at the end of the day, you guys are the lifeblood. Anybody else that comes on board, they can just go off and do what else.
Right.
You don't want to just give away the farm to people who can go off and do what else. So be very strategic in how you give it away. It doesn't always have to be so cookie cutter to say, here, take 25%, take 25. No, take 7.5 now. We're going to do 6 months, and then we'll come back and revisit it. So just be strategic.
I just, to piggyback off of that, I think vesting is absolutely key. One of our personal experiences, so one of my co-founders started out with us. She was one of our principal scientists and had an equal founding share. And then she received an amazing opportunity to work at Microsoft. And so for conflict of interest of our work and the work that she would be doing, she wouldn't be able to contribute to our growth in the way that we thought that she would have initially. So we had to have very honest conversations. We're still, I mean, we're on great terms, but the reality is that she will receive what was vested, and then we have to deal with and absorb, or she has to forfeit the rest, and that protects us and her, and we obviously have it open for whatever might happen with her in the future, but it's so important because relationships change and investment changes, and you have to protect yourself and your investment.
So one thing I wanted to add is related but a little bit different. I work pseudo for the FCC. My day job, I run analytics for procurement and program manager as well. But in general, I come from a government contracting and defense contracting background. And something that all of these companies are looking for, even if it's just somebody that can type out some PowerPoints, they're all looking to hit this goal of minority, women-owned, or hub zones. Hub zones essentially areas that are, lower income and stuff like that. They all, on a daily basis, I have seen them literally search to find these companies that may fit as many of those pieces as possible. So if you can fit these three things, woman-owned, minority, and hub zone all in one, I mean, you are key to get into anything government contracts related. So that's just something that I want you to keep in mind. going back to what they were saying, also remember that, especially if you're starting lean, um, giving away equity is not something that you want to take lightly. So if it is something that you can literally get this person to do and pay them out of pocket without giving equity, even if it's 1 or 2%, keep your 1 or 2% because one day that 1 or 2% could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you can get this person to do whatever it is you need, or you can contract them for 6 months and might be a little bit of a pain, but you can pay them out of pocket, try that route first. I would say that equity is more for the people that, yeah, we may have started out paying you 6 months and wow, you did such a great job and wow, you banged out all these hours that weren't required for you to do. If this person's kind of sticking with you in the trenches, like he said, that's when you start that conversation of, wow, okay, maybe this person does need some equity because eventually the money that we're giving them is not going to be enough. They want to be bought in. They want to be bought into your success and they want to see you grow. But you don't start there up front. You try your best to cash that person out right away. You have a question?
As a follow-up to that, did you have, I guess, specifically for did you have an operating agreement in place that said, in the case that one of you co-founders left, that you would dilute the equity held? Or how does that work generally? Do you just set that up front in the operating agreement? Because I was thinking with co-founders, you just split it equally, but maybe that's not the best way.
Yeah, so I think that it takes a lot to, I think everyone else's point on the panel, thinking about also that what will make you the most valuable in the way that your the equity is split. But what we did first, it was the first thing we did. We sat down, we legal zoomed, had one of our friends who was an attorney come in and sit in, and we set down terms. We had to because we recognized that while we're all getting along now, who knows what might change. And we're optimistic, but we need to be prepared. So it was a day one task that had to be completed, and I highly recommend it. Did that answer your question?
Sorry. Hi, how are you all? Thank you so much. I mean, this whole event was amazing. Can I just say that? And it's not even done yet. Like, I'm gonna be here bright and early tomorrow, God willing. So, to your point, Miss Winter, you talked about how having something down on paper for the sake of moving the business forward. That made a lot of sense. I resonated with that. Can you speak to, do you all have a contract or did you all have a contract in place for what was really going on behind the scenes? And how did that come out and like what was that involved?
I can tell you it's hard to have a business with one of your close friends, right? So I do preface conversations like this is business conversation, like we gonna eat later, you know? And so when we first started, maybe for the first 6 months, we didn't have a contract. And it was just like, it started on a napkin. And then we realized, oh snap, we're starting to involve some serious cash here. Sat down with one of my lawyer friends and he's like, you need a contract. And we sat down and we said, this is not personal. And we argued about it for a little bit. And then we argued a little bit more when I said it was 50-50. And I was like, you know what, I'm leaving. Like, I said it and he was like, really? And I was just like, yeah, like I'm putting my foot down. So every year, actually our contract is 2 years. Every 2 years we evaluate what's going on with this company. And I remember the first conversation, he's like, why is it so short? I was like, because I don't know what's gonna happen. Not to say that that's my exit strategy, because I am notorious for saying, I'm out. I don't know if you believe me all the time, but I say it. But it helps just keep things fresh, and it affords for a legal review of what this business is in a regular cadence that you can follow. And then you just invite the lawyers in, and you just make that very clear to each other. This is not personal. This is business, and this is what's gonna help us. And so for us, no matter, at least the way we split it up is ownership and profit. Our profit doesn't change. And our how much money you put in doesn't change. We split that down 50-50 every single time. But as far as who owns more of this company and how this company operates and who can make the final decisions and things of that nature, that's where our percentages work. And that just works for the two of us at the moment. Because at the end of the day, when we had to do a lot, as I said, we foot a lot of our bills ourselves, actually all of our bills ourselves. It's a matter of saying, yo, you got half? So you got your 75% now and that 25% later, because you're still gonna get half. You know what I mean? So yes, you can go online and just see a template and start there. It doesn't have to be anything too formal. You just need to be notarized and reviewed by a lawyer, and just put a cadence by which you can continue to keep up with it.
I guess just to kind of expand a little bit so that I really understand. So what you project to some of these these funders and accelerators, if you will, outwardly to people can be different than what's behind the scenes?
I think it depends on your company. You know, for us, as I said, being a black woman engineer, I'm everybody's quota. Like, you want me, and I'm gonna capitalize and eat all of your food, you know? And so I need to own more. I need to be the face. But we've agreed, this is our thing, and our money is split. Not every company is comfortable. Some people may say because you have more equity, you put more in, or because you put more time in. And we're saying, for us, it's capitalization on the industry, not necessarily more or less value of who you are. And that's just a conversation you have with your startup partners, and how that works best for you.
If I could add to that, documentation is always key. At the end of the day, there are situations where you trust a person enough to where we get it on a napkin for a temporary time period, but we set the goal to get a contract in place as soon as possible. Because again, you don't know what's going to happen. And I truly believe if you respect my value as a partner, you should respect me enough to make sure that you're protecting your best interests as well as my best interests in the form of a legal document. Good negotiations are when both people walk away from the table a little bit unhappy. A little bit unhappy. That's a good negotiation. You ain't get everything you want. I didn't get everything I wanted. But at the end of the day, we've come to an agreement. We're protected. And the truth of the matter is, nobody plans to fail, right? We plan to all be successful. So if we come out the gate, flip the switch, the company's on, and we hit it out the park the next day, TD Jakes said the worst thing in the world is ask for things that you want and not be prepared for it. So if you don't got a document in place and the investor's like, you guys are the diamond in the rough. How fast can I write you a check? Oh man, we don't have nothing in place. Think about it from that perspective. So it's not just the A and the B. Something happens to me, I die, or there needs to be a succession plan. There needs to be something in place. These are real world scenarios that you have to be prepared for. So I think in all instances, you need to have some form of documentation, even if it says that this agreement is temporary and will be revisited at some point in time. Because at the end of the day, you become a better business person, you become more refined, and you guys are now vested equally in the form of agreement. Maybe not in equity or the same percentage, but we both got our name on the line in this. So I take it more serious because I've committed to that. So I think documentation is always important.
You just mentioned a very important piece. What happens to me if something goes wrong? Like, one of the things that's written into our contract, you're paying my brother, my mama, and my daddy my share should something happen to me. And that longevity of a company, because you don't know what's happening. You don't know when you're gonna blow up, and unfortunately, life is not promised. And so you wanna make sure if you're starting a company, who gets your share? Who is your successor? Where does this go? And when I'm ready to exit, how do I get out? Because there are two ways. You can be pushed out, or you can choose to leave. And that's the hard part of the conversation of saying, well, what do you get when you leave? Do you buy me out, or do I leave everything on the table? And that needs to be written in when all is well. When I don't know you well enough, and I don't know your dirty stuff, and we're not in the trenches, to make sure that it's just, at that point, you just call the paper and say, we agreed on this 2 years ago.
I would say that's also a great place to clarify your roles as well, because as a startup business, if you don't have something like that in place, the lines of what you'll actually be doing or what you're supposed to be doing can sometimes get really murky. You might start this and think this person's really good at that, but the other person's doing it because they're better or whatever the case is. But within that document, that's where you can say this person is in charge of general operations and what that means and so forth and so on. So it's very clearly defined up front. If you ever have to go to arbitration down the road or whatever the case is, you can say, this was my role, this is what we signed off on, versus getting to hopefully not arbitration, but if you had to, getting there and realizing there was never any clearly defined role of what that person is actually going to be doing.
For those for whom it's relevant, could you describe the transition of taking your startup from a part-time nights and weekends gig to a full-time endeavor?
Sure. Horribly terrifying. I'm just kidding. It's a lot. You know, it's something that should be calculated, right? And it's the leap. And knowing where you are and if this is really sustainable, like have you validated that this is something that's viable for you? And doing a strong risk assessment, but not being afraid to jump into that. So for me, I left a director role and I was very happy with my company, the company that I was working with previously, but I had to be honest with myself. And I had to say that if I really wanted my company, Sonovi, to do well, that I needed to dedicate the time. That I didn't, there weren't enough hours in the day to do both things successfully. And so removing yourself, preparing yourself financially to say, okay, am I going to be able to survive for a year? What are my options? Can I consult on the side instead of having a full 9 to 5? How do you really sit down with your family and your life and you create a real plan? And it took me 6 months to make my exit strategy from corporate America. And I knew that I would lose everything in my company. I couldn't lead a team if I wasn't giving it my all when I saw them giving it their all. And so it was worth ripping the Band-Aid off. And also, I'm not afraid because I know that everything that I'm learning through every step of the way will either help me start another successful company or to really have this grow to where it needs to be. Are you thinking about it? Where are you in your kind of stage and phase?
I'm actually coming from the tech track.
Yeah.
So I'm still in corporate America.
Cool.
My wife is the entrepreneur here.
Hello, entrepreneur. And congratulations. Sorry, I don't know if you guys are left.
Yeah, I think the viability component is very critical. But I think whether it's leaving corporate America or coming fresh out of school or just like launching something that you've always wanted to do, I think the number one thing that people tend to hang their hat on when they choose not to go into entrepreneurship full time is what? Somebody take a guess. Risks or what else? Money. So I think all those things can be combined into one word: fear of failure, right? Again, I'm a big guy on quotes. Like I love quotes because I feel like they're like staples and they're signs that you need to be honing in on something. And one thing that stuck with me is a lot of times people are afraid of failure. But in all actuality, because we don't have this much time here on earth, we should be afraid of succeeding at things that don't matter in life. That's what I said, bro. Seriously. When I heard that, it changed my whole mindset. Why am I spending time on things that they may be paying me a lot of money, but am I happy? Is it affecting my health? Is it affecting my family? Ultimately, I have God's gift in me. Will it reach its full fruition if I just hold on to it and not go for it? I'm afraid of being normal. I'm afraid of doing things that are low-hanging fruit, easy to do. Be afraid of succeeding at things that don't matter in life as opposed to failure. That's my take on that.
And one thing about whether or not you can afford to do it and afford to leave, can you afford not to do it, is really also an important question, because the idea that you have that you're holding on to, can it impact, can it change the world, the quality of life? What are you sitting on that if you don't give it 100% will be a huge missed opportunity, not just for you, but for society?
I mean, I can speak from the other side of the fence where neither of us have made that transition yet. But I think what's also important is that you have a plan. What does that look like? When should you pivot? And if you put it down on paper, it's a lot easier than when you get there and you're like, oh, should I not? Well, hey, look, this is the plan we set out with. We said when we have sales of X amount, and when this is sustainable by X amount of years or whatever the case is, that you would do X. That's going to be a lot easier for you to then say, this is hard and I have that feeling, but I'm going to make the leap to make this a success. So for us, we actually have that plan in place where I'm supposed to go first. And I already have
Oh man,
I already have the knots
push him off the ledge.
in my stomach, but I am going to make sure that I follow through with that plan. Once we can, I can line it up. Here's what we wrote versus here's where we are. I'm going to make that. So have a plan.
Definitely.
So I'll ask a question. Oh, no, go ahead, please.
I guess I struggle with that too. I'm in corporate America, and I like my job. But ultimately, I want to go on and do what I want to do, like not for corporate America. And I guess I don't know. How do you know when is the right time? Maybe that's the question.
I can tell you the realest moment where I knew it was the right time. I was in a board meeting, it was just the 7 VPs, and I was sitting there, and everyone's talking about, okay, so we had just sold the company, we had a turnover, and they said, all right, we all need to work harder, double down, get your teams ready. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, how much did you all just make? I have no equity in this company that I'm working my ass off for every day, harder than all of you. And you just bought your third house and this and that. And I'm sitting here like, I know I'm not. Why am I in this room? Why am I a leader if I'm not qualified in your mind, right, to have equity? What is my buy-in? Why am I grinding? So I think that when you have this moment of what am I getting back from this other than a paycheck and security, or what it's honestly like a eureka moment that you have. You just know, you're gonna know. It's like, I can't tell you, but you're going to know. Something is going to trigger a WTF moment where you're like, I'm out because what I'm doing is more important. And that's just, I mean, that's what happened to me.
I can say, as someone, as I said, I'm trying to figure out the balance, corporate entrepreneurship, the brand, that's me. One of the things I'm looking for to see if he can do it. And that sounds really bad. No, it does. And so when you have a partnership, I don't want him to fail at all. So I'm going to try to get him there, but I personally need to see someone else do it. And I don't come from a track where I've seen someone else do it. Like, I hear about people doing it, but I'm one of those people like, Jesus, I need to see the nail, right? Let me see how this works. And I think at that point, because I don't plan on giving up, then I can do it. But I also can say, for me, when we first started the company, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was never my interest. My interest was simply to help him figure out how he could be an entrepreneur. I was like, oh, nobody's gonna help him. All right, cool, I'll help you. And that's really where I came from. But in the last 2 years or so, God is opening up doors for me to do my own thing and become my own person and move this along and make some money over here and over there. And I'm getting to the point that, okay, 2 salaries might be looking the same soon. And so I'm fighting it, and I'm like, go ahead, swim, go, floaty. But I think life will show you things that lead you to that path if you allow yourself to be open. So if you want to play both roles, like I tell people all the time, don't be afraid to sit on both sides of the fence. It doesn't make you any more or any less of an entrepreneur. I mean, our first pitch that we did was like between 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning, using a ladder to hold up a computer and a little iPhone to read the thing. It was just, I got off work, that's all we can do right now. You know, and eventually, as you said, you might get to the point like, yo, I got to give something more. It's helpful because there's 2 of us, so half and half are making a whole. But ride it until you're just the WTF moment. Or find yourself a company that affords for you to explore that. That's one of the things that I've been blessed with. My company, when I want to go do endeavors, my boss, if he can't pay for it, he's going to say, don't take vacation for it. He's like, I want you to figure out what you want to do. He's like, the fact that I can make you grow, that makes me successful. And so if you find that type of, support to say, oh, I see where she's going, and it's not affecting her work, then you really can explore that option and see where you're coming from.
So I'll just add to that real quick and kind of address the elephant in the room. I mean, you have to be making some kind of money so you can live. Okay,
Yeah.
so I mean, it seems like that's the point that we're kind of dancing around, but it's ultimately true. So you're looking for two things. You're looking for cash flow and sustainability. Do you have one customer this month and then you don't have another customer for another 3 or 4 months? Or have you built it to the place where you say, hey, I have at least one consistent customer every month, and that's enough cash flow to keep the business going and take out a little bit that I need to live? Now, I get it. So a lot of people would think, okay, well, I'll wait till I can take $100,000 salary and that's when I'll jump ship. No, you might have to adjust your lifestyle to fit your business, but at the same time, understanding you still have to eat. So you have to figure out within yourself, hey, what can I reduce? How much does it really cost me to live? Understanding that's going to make me hungry and uncomfortable. So I'm going to grow this business because I'm only, I was taking this paycheck before. Now I'm dealing with this paycheck. I'm doing my own work. Yes, but I want to be able to live the way I did before. So once that makes you hungry, you're going to go and grow that business. But understanding that it's not going to be the same paycheck as before. So again, you're looking at cash flow and sustainability and deciding for yourself when when I have enough sustainability and when I have enough cash flow to reinvest into the business itself, but take out just enough that I can live off of until this grows.
Good point. Is there another question here? No? No? Oh, here we go.
So, regarding outside investors, sorry for my voice, at what point can they lay claim or ownership to what you're creating? Like, if nothing was signed, no documents, anything like that, but they want to start, let's say, purchasing servers or, spending some money on your stuff, can they lay ownership to what you're doing at that point if nothing has been signed?
So I'm sorry.
I have a question about that. So
Yeah.
are they offering anything other than capital is the first question. Is it like any type of intellectual collaboration? Okay. So it's just capital and it's through, they're purchasing something or possibly?
I'm hesitant to let them purchase anything because I don't want them to say, okay, well, now we have a stake in it.
So also what makes me nervous just about that is also, is there anything proprietary about what they're purchasing from you? Okay. Either way, I think agreement, no matter what, are they expressing any reservations about signing anything, or is it just not come up?
No, it's similar to what you touched on earlier, where the investor says, all right, well, we're willing to give you a seven-figure valuation, and they're like, okay, well, we can do this, we can do that, but they haven't created new terms yet. They're saying, well, we're going to invest X amount of dollars, but I know for a fact, in order for a product that I develop, it needs, this equipment, it needs that equipment, and I hope that will buy that. So if nothing has been signed yet, I'm like, well, I want them to buy that for you because if they do, then you'll own a piece. And where I have other potential investors or people I haven't even talked to, who probably have better track record, I guess their company can actually get stuff going a lot quicker. But this person's over here making a lot of verbal promises.
Yeah. So I think that it puts you in a very vulnerable position for that other group of investors, because then you have to be transparent with them and say, hey, listen, this person has put in this amount of money or has this portion of my company that I don't have control over because nothing was signed. So in order to have confidence from other investors, I think that everything just has to be done clean and very efficiently with counsel reviewing it to some extent. I just think that any favors have hurt me. And I can I have a laundry list of friends and favors that have negatively impacted my business. And so moving forward, I always do things in a very meticulous and clean way. And by setting a standard from the beginning, everyone knows that that's how they engage. That's how you engage with the people that want to be a part of your team, whether as an investor or a founder, right? A co-founder, is that you have a clean standard and that's just who you are. So your brand is in alignment with the standard.
One thing that I find interesting is that they're willing to buy it from their own accounts, from their own, checks and balances. If their agreements, most definitely, most important. Now, if you're sure that that's where you want to go, set up the account in the business's name and tell them to drop the money there. And so at least the money may get paid out that way. I'm not necessarily saying you should. You definitely need legal, but there's a bigger risk in company A purchasing servers for company B, and company A is now signing it, versus company A gave money to company B, and company B is being purchased outside. I would say to you, however, if you have other people on the side, ask them and use that to your advantage and say, why are you so hesitant to sign? Play them against each other. If you really want my stuff, then sign for my stuff.
Yeah.
But if you don't have any, then you want to figure out a way that not that they necessarily own it, but you at least have an argument in court, which it sounds like if company A decides to purchase on your behalf, that is theirs, and whatever is on theirs is theirs. They do that in college. It's like when you invent something, I know at least at RPI, if you invent something and it goes live, 70% of it belongs to RPI because I gave you the server and the computer and the stuff to do it. Really? So you want to protect yourself from situations like that.
I would say no. Hell no.
You sure?
From the yeah. No, seriously. If you're going to write a check, right, there has to be some level, again, documentation, sophistication. That means that there's no checks and balances. Say you get audited one year, and you have to look back through your books and say, hey, where did all this money come from? Or where, what's the EBITDA on like, we won't get too deep into the finance. Like, what are the checks and balances as it relates to your expenses, right? You have no documentation to go back and say, well, he put this in, or at the end of the day, if things go bad, he could just walk away and you holding the bag. I'm also concerned because if you're talking about servers, the servers might not be proprietary, but the things that are on it might be proprietary. So he buys it from you, right? You deploy your application or whatever it is. I don't know your business. It's on the server. Those are his servers. At the end of the day, he purchased those under his name or his business's name or whatever. It has no relationship. It's just, it comes a he said, she said type of situation. Furthermore, as was said earlier, you take that investment, right, and you go out to raise more money. I think it was mentioned earlier. You now have to explain, why does this person, you have no documentation to say how much can he claim. You know what I'm saying? So when it's time to go out and raise more money, okay, hey, I needed to raise another round. We got 5% up for grabs. Well, this guy's got 15%. He's put in less. How did you guys come to that equation? So I just think all in all, it's not a good situation. If you're not willing, excuse me, to put it on paper, I lose respect for you and your business acumen because you don't have enough respect for me and the situation. Again, if this thing takes off and he's first in capital, turn around 2 weeks later, next investor wants to come in, you guys have not properly set yourself up for success. So I just don't think that I would put things on pause as quickly as possible. I would ask all the tough questions as soon as possible because it's just a dark rabbit hole. Yeah.
I'd say the questions that are kind of mulling around in my head as we're talking about it. To me, a professional investor is going to want to protect themselves regardless. So they're going to want to come to you straight up like, here's the money, but sign here. And it'll be up to you to say, nope, not that, not that, not that. You understand what I'm saying? They're going to be sharks. They're going to go and try and get the best bang for their buck, but they're going to legally try to protect themselves. So my question in my head was like, okay, how professional is this guy as an investor? And if he's just willing to say, hey, I'm gonna throw cash at you without any kind of agreement, who else is he throwing cash at that could possibly go belly up and cause him to disappear because he's put his money into things without any kind of signature or any kind of anything like that, and in behaving in an unprofessional manner allowed his money to be depleted. all of a sudden he no longer has the money to keep your servers up and running or whatever the case is. So before getting into that, I would definitely probably do more of a deep dive into him. Is he a real investor? Does he have any other documented, partnerships with anybody else? Or is this just his first time around? He got a little expendable cash and he's just willing to throw it at you? Because that's going to tell you right out the gate. That's probably not the person that you want. You want somebody that probably has a history of doing it versus this is my first time around, so I'm going to just throw cash in the ring.
Not only that, you have to be, I always advise folks, if you're going to work with an investor, not to say that you plan on losing their money, but they have to be comfortable with the risk of losing the money. Worst thing in the world is taking from money that can't afford to lose it. He may have it available, but he can't afford to lose that. And especially if there's no documentation, you lose that, something happens to the server, somebody hacks it, water comes down, a hurricane comes, like what are the protocols? And it's very, I would highly advise, find legal, ask the tough questions, and try to get some documentation.
Okay, I'll ask a question. Bringing it back home to where we're at, how do you all feel Baltimore compares to other cities in the U.S. or even other countries in terms of a startup city? What is lacking? What is good? How does it compare?
Well, I've been in this space for about 2 years in the startup space, and I am proud to see representation increasing, Startup Nest being an example, when it comes to incubators and just what we're really offering as a city in terms of resources for entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs of color. So I think that we're making progress. We're moving in the right direction. But I do think that there's a missing component. So a lot of people are getting involved in startup spaces and incubators because it's trending, right? They're saying, hey, I got some federal funding. Here's my incubator. Come on in. And what you have to realize is that just because they are claiming to offer these resources doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right fit for you. You can be selective in the incubators and the accelerators that you choose to be involved in. And while they may be limited in Baltimore, I think that especially, and I keep saying it, and this is not a plug, Kyle did not pay me, but things like Startup Nest are very important because we also, I can say that I was the only Black woman in the accelerator that I was in here in Baltimore. And there was a very significant and apparent divide between the resources that were made available to me and that of other people in my cohort. And so it is important that we increase our representation in spaces like these. So I can just say that Baltimore is doing well, but absolutely needs to and can do better. And it is and involves things like this and moments like this weekend that really we're all coming together and focusing on where we need to be.
Yeah, first of all, thank you.
Sure, yeah.
Appreciate that.
The check is in the mail.
Check is in the mail. You take PayPal? No, just kidding. I think she's absolutely right. I think that, Baltimore is improving in terms of its access to resources. But I think that we need to take it from a micro perspective and think about it from a macro perspective, right? Steve Stout, again, I'm a quotes guy. It's the tanning of America, right? Going forward, there's going to be more Black and brown people in this country, scientifically. More people are integrating. The demographics are changing, things of that nature, right? So in 10 to 15 to 20 years from now, are we going to look back and say Baltimore was, in other cities, was responsible enough to put in institutions that provided access to resources so that those that do become the majority can uphold the mantle of the economy? We got to think about it from that perspective, meaning is the country as a whole getting hip to the fact that it ain't going to be like it's always been? And we have to make sure that people of color are successful in launching these businesses because that will be the majority demographic. You look at it at a global stage, China ain't slowing down. India ain't slowing down. Brazil, all these tech hubs, those that are in tech, they not slowing down. They do not have to come to the United States to get access to information as much as they did in the past. mentor of mine always says the key to success is access to information. It's not luck, it's not talent, it's not money. The more access to information you have, the more successful you will be. And I say that to say that I think that Baltimore is getting hip. We definitely got some things to work on. Um, but that's the goal, right? That's the challenge. That's the thing that always keeps us hungry. But I think things like with William and Eric and I mean Derek and everybody part of the Minority Innovation Weekend team, these type of events are important. And I think sharing the word about these things are important because as much as things are changing, that don't mean people gonna give up what they've had for such a very long time. You know what I'm saying? Don't just expect them to say, okay, you got it. You next, you got it. It's not gonna work that way. We have to show up with the access to information and the ability to execute. It's one thing to hold the knowledge, but if we don't execute it and do the things that we've done, one of the things that I can say I'm very proud about with the Startup Nest is we've been around for a year and we've still come in contact with folks that, man, I never heard about you. We decided to do the work first, as opposed to running to the podium and say, we here. Nah, that's not how you're gonna create change. That's not how you're gonna create communities that are willing to feel vested enough and comfortable enough to share your ideas. Being an entrepreneur is hard. Sharing your ideas is not easy. You know what I mean? So I'll digress and I'll say that Baltimore is doing well. We could be doing better. And I think events like this only add to the reason why we should continue to push.
We are more on the DC side, but what I would say is in me kind of trying to be a visionary with our company and um, looking forward to future growth, I always end up looking into Baltimore. Why? From a product standpoint, strategic placement. Baltimore is awesome as far as the rates, warehousing, and real estate is a lot cheaper here than anywhere else in Maryland, literally, that's not extremely rural. Another thing is like international seaport. So you want to be able to, if you're in a product mindset and you're probably manufacturing and stuff overseas, you need to be near waterways strategically so you can say, hey, ship here, ship here, ship here. And then if anything, you got your trucks coming to pick it up and you can get up and down the 95 rather quickly. So not only from a strategic standpoint is Baltimore in a great position to get yourself up and down the coast, but it's also going to be a lot cheaper than many other places, understanding that you can bring merchandise straight in here from many other places like China.
One of the things I would love to see in the DMV area is, well, two things. One, the removal of entitlement from our millennial group, and the reassurance of young girls that I can do this too. And I'm not sure if we're focusing on that. So the entitlement piece, you know, we can go into colleges, University of Baltimore, we can go everywhere. But these Bamas believe they coming out making cash. And they're not trying to hear me when I say, you might not make any cash. Or, you know, we might have a 6-month internship and then I'm gonna pay you cash. They haven't figured out how to teach them money, management, and financials. We're still seeing a lot of people who are on the podium saying, I made it. In hindsight, I would have done this. Versus, I'm still trying to make it and we still pour eating saltine crackers and, you know, sardines. Like, and this is what we're doing. And removing this mindset of I come out with my degree and I make this work. Also for our young girls, I mean, I tell people all the time, sometimes I only do speaking engagements because I'm the fly on the wall. I'm the female fly on the wall. And I'll never forget once, we did this last year, and for some reason, I ended up in National Society of Black Engineer magazine, and my friend went, and she brought it home. She has 3 daughters, and they went to the page, and they were like, that's Miss Sharika. Maybe I can be an engineer.
Nice.
What? Y'all are 10, 12, and 8. And if that's what all you needed, then I believe then we need to start putting more of us on the front of the magazine. You know, we even I like to volunteer with the youth at my church. This young girl, she was 4, we were making paper airplanes. She's like, I can't make it. And I was like, didn't mommy just buy you a robotics engineer lady doll? And she goes, yeah. I said, you think she can't make the plane? She's like, no, she can make the plane. And I was like, then you can make the plane, and really going in. And she made her plane, and she was too excited for her plane. But feeding these young girls, and that doesn't mean, dude, y'all don't have, stake in the game. But, as Ellington was saying, it's hard when you're the only woman in the room. I remember being in engineering classes where dudes would tell me I'm gonna take notes in the group because that's all I'm worth. I was like, we all failing then, because I ain't taking no notes. And they just be like, are you serious? I'm like, I'm dead serious. I'm not no note taker. I'm here with you. And so we have to figure out how to get these women in and to remove this entitlement. So I think it's great we're opening up for businesses, but businesses are gonna start with that generation that hasn't figured out that this is not easy and that I can do it, but I need to sweat a little bit.
I'm gonna piggyback off of that real quick. I think that one of the things that Baltimore collectively needs to do is to meet its residents and occupants where they are. And what I mean by that is, what I'm saying, everybody in this room is esteemed and got their credentials, and we good, we got badges, we cool. But at the end of the day, this city has billion-dollar ideas in these streets. I was watching a pitch from, or not a pitch, but a keynote of Van Jones at a conference, and he was talking about how in Oakland he was running this pitch competition for youth, underrepresented youth in Oakland, right? So this young girl came up with an app on how she could create, she's in foster care, by the way, very key point. She wanted to create this app because all of her clothes are hand-me-downs, right? Well, why can't I choose my clothes before I get them, right? Little did she know that Van Jones had executives from Google and Facebook there, and they were like, man, the consignment industry is a billion-dollar industry. And this sitting in the mind of a young girl from the hood who doesn't have access to resources. We got great ideas, y'all. Young kid came to me the other day, he was like, yeah, Baltimore, we invented Uber, right? I was like, what? He's like, got the hack. Yeah, you catch a hack. We just pay people. Like, think about it. Think about it. Uber don't own any cars, yet they got millions of people on the road right now. That's something that I think Baltimore can do a better job with. And whoever we need to talk to, let's talk to them. But again, we need to think about it from bigger than this moment, because this moment will change as time goes on. Like, let's not put all our money on the table now. Let's invest for the future. And that's such a cliche term, but like, it's so true. It's so true if we want to remain relevant. So that's my feedback.
One other question?
The question about finding advisors and mentors who can help guide starting entrepreneurs and so they can avoid pitfalls, that would be useful. And also finding angel investors who are catering more to the minority community.
I think that, again, going back to those three pieces of criteria, if you are going to advise me, if you are going to invest in me being my company, you either bring a tangible asset, you bring a skill set, or you bring a network. If you don't have one of those three things, your advisement and your investment only has a limited shelf life. Because I'm bringing you on board to help me get to the next, to advise me and help invest in me to get to the next platform. So I need access to a network of folks. Our conversation that we had, access to a network. We need cash. We need access to equipment, resources, facilities. If you ain't bringing that, okay, what's the next thing you could bring? You bring a skill set. You're a master coder, or you at least know about something that I fall short in. So if you aren't bringing one of those three things, I think you have to, keep looking. So those, again, I think that relates to in a co-founder, an investor, and an advisor.
I would say you may not want to be narrow-minded in finding your advisors or mentors. For me, I wouldn't say the business side of me has an advisor. But my VP at work saw something in me and said, listen, I want to hook you up as a mentor with the CEO. And at first I was like, I can't learn nothing from her. she's just as ballsy and out of order as I am. I'm just gonna get worse. And that was just what the thought was. But come to find out, he put me in that mentorship to grow me as a person, to say that your person side needs to grow, your emotional IQ needs to grow, your comfort with getting out of comfort zone needs to grow, which will help the business. And so you don't necessarily want to say, man, I need a business person all the time. It might be someone who knows you well to say, hey, there's a part of you on the personality side that needs a little help that can eventually help your business. And it may not seem like a direct path to cash flow or direct path to advancement, but be open to those who know you to advise you as to say, try this real quick. It's a little roundabout, but come to it. And it definitely is helping me realize that, wow, sitting at this podium is not that bad. And really knowing what it means to run a business and stay true to who I am. So I would say when looking for that mentor, look for someone who helps your personal life and maybe who may be different from someone who may help the business.
I think there's a difference between your advisors and your advisory board also, right?
Yes.
So what I did was I am a big vision board person. So I decided who I wanted ultimately to be on my advisory board. And it was like the chief medical officer at Mass Gen at Harvard. I was like, I need him. The cardiology department has to have him. And I had like all these other random people, like I don't, honestly, I can't remember, like let's say Oprah's on there, I don't know. And so I was like, how do I work backwards? So I had to think about how can I get to these people? I don't know them, they don't know me, they don't know about my technology, but how would I need to communicate with them? How would I need to frame my story so that it would be applicable and pique an interest with them? So I started very local, and I would say, okay, well, I know a ER nurse at Hopkins, so let me just start there, have a conversation, see what feedback she can offer. And then over time, how does that relationship grow and develop to put me on a path so that I do have access to the people that I need access to really get my needle to move, right? So I always am a big fan of working backwards, knowing where you want to be and never losing sight of that vision, and then really working through the steps that it's going to take to get there. And that's through the network capital that you will obtain over time, right? So advisors are key. Mine are great. Our company was not legitimate until we hired our CTO because we were a team that didn't have a PhD on board, right? And so we were able to, through some very sneaky reverse engineering, get the former dean of Hopkins School of Engineering on our core team. And that was done literally by trolling humans and saying that, like, I see your effort, but I didn't know how to talk to these people because I came from a completely different world, but I had to train myself and my conversation so that when it was game time, I was ready to receive those blessings,
All right, so I like to write my thoughts down so I don't lose track of what I'm thinking. For me, your advisors, me specifically, fit into two categories. One, they may not be directly related to exactly what you're doing, but they've seen success at a specific level, and you see visionary-wise, you want to reach this level one day. And the other one is somebody who has probably been past your pain point or your next roadblock and successfully gotten around it. So while for me personally, I'm looking at what my future roadblocks will be in the next 2 to 3 years as I grow and trying to find someone that will fit that market. I've also been successful in being mentored by a successful CEO that ran a $200 million a year company. And even though what he was doing was more so defense agency related and not related to what I'm doing, a lot of the things he was able to tell me were invaluable because I just could never really picture what the day of a CEO that's running a company at that level looked like. I couldn't understand that, hey, between all the meetings and all the things that he does, why he would go to bed at 7 p.m. at night, but he's up every day, including weekends at 4 a.m. Okay? So yes, it's great to have somebody that's related to what you're doing and has seen the roadblocks and found a way around them. But also, if there's someone in your network that has been successful at business, it's great to talk to those people as well, because it'll help you get ready for that next level. It'll help you understand why you might need to change some habits and how you might need to formulate some things just because they've seen it and they're living through it. So you kind of get to experience it with them before you reach there and realize you have to readjust.
One other thing I want to add is, especially as it relates to advisors, is be respectful of their time. Being an advisor is a lot of times a thankless job, whether there's some type of stipend or whatever type of compensation that you guys work out. That's one thing. But don't just bring on an advisor to put a workload on their shoulders and say, hey, figure it out for me. You're leveraging their knowledge, their network, their skill set, all those things. But be respectful of their time. Also, make sure that you are humbling yourself for constructive criticism. Business is hard. We don't know everything. Even when you've achieved all these things, you still don't know everything, right? So be humble enough to respect their opinion. Make sure that you're prepared to receive it, and if you have any feedback, prepared to give it back to them in a respectful way, of course. Because again, valuing their time. I may meet with an advisor once every month for maybe an hour. I don't know, depending on your situation. But be respectful of their time and be humble enough, especially not only advisors but also investors. You got their money on the line. Not to say that everybody is right, because people get emotional when things are when finances are involved. That's again one of the reasons why the vetting component is so important. When you're working with somebody, like, I need to make sure that you are able to go through the trenches and go through the ups and downs with me. So they should have the tolerance as much as you should have the tolerance. So.
One interesting thing, I wasn't getting anywhere with one of my advisors. It took me a while to realize what was going wrong. So I would come in and I was so impressed by their portfolio and who they were. So they'd come in, we'd sit down, and I would just be so ready to share everything that I had done since our last meeting, instead of tackling and utilizing their brain power and their energy to solve the problems that I had. So instead of saying, oh, I met with this person, this was so great, I'm saying, hey, this is my biggest challenge this quarter. Can we spend this time in considered a strategy session? So always coming prepared, having them having set expectations also for what they're going to be engaging with you on. So if you're meeting once a month, personalize that agenda for that meeting so that you're crossing things off of your list, that they're not just a name that you can put on your website, but that they're actually helping you eliminate hurdles.
You know, one thing that comes to mind when you mentioned that is having an accountability partner outside of your business. I have this one friend, my friend Joe, one of the smartest people I ever met. We have a meeting, and when I say Joe doesn't care how my day went, there's an agenda. And he's like, so I told you to do this last time, and you told me to do so we're just gonna go through those things. And if we have some extra time, we can talk about life and the pursuit of happiness. But we're going through this list. And it's so real because of the respect of time. It's like, we got an hour, and Joe will be like, yo, don't waste my time. And I noticed that I don't waste my time either. And so having someone who is on your back, and you have meetings that's strictly talking about what we said we were going to accomplish, and you better have an explanation, not an excuse, because he's not taking an excuse, an explanation as to why I didn't get that done. And then we can work through the problem of the why. But then that next meeting, Joe will say, I've had an email once where he said to me, did you accomplish the goals? And I was like, no. He's like, then we're not meeting. And I was like, rude. But it's real because it's accountability, and you're not ready to talk, so I'm not ready to listen. End of story. So consider getting yourself an accountability partner, someone who wants to move and someone's energy that you have to match. Outside of mentors, anything, but they'll keep you going.
I think on that note, we can officially end the panel and then provide an opportunity for anyone to approach our panelists for some additional questions. So let's go ahead and give a panel round of applause. Thank you guys so much. We're done.